Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to dig into some really concerning news coming out of Kenya. It's about the alleged abduction of Juja Member of Parliament, George Koimburi, just this past Sunday, May 25th. And this, well, it feels like more than just a headline. It really raises some fundamental questions, I think, about political freedom. Demands a closer look.
It absolutely does. We're looking at something that could, send pretty significant ripples through Kenya's political scene. And getting a handle on all the different layers, well, that's crucial if you're following what's happening in the country.
Okay, so first, maybe, who is George Koimburi? He's the current MP for Juja. Got elected in a by-election back in 2021. He represented the People's Empowerment Party.
Right. He's generally seen as aligned with the former Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua.
And he hasn't been afraid to speak out against the current government's policies. It's also worth noting, he won that seat pretty decisively, got 12,159 votes. Susan Wati, too, from the Jubilee Party, was his main opponent. That's quite a margin.
Yeah, that 2021 win definitely highlights his, let's say, political standing in Juja, which, makes all these recent events around him even more significant, potentially more impactful.
Exactly. So to try and understand what's unfolding, we've been looking closely at reports from maishatv Kenya and also Citizen TV Kenya. Our aim today, for you listening, is really to get past the initial shock, to understand the key events, what might be behind them, and maybe what this signals for Kenya's political future. Okay, so the main event, the alleged abduction itself. Let's break that down.
Well, the sequence of events described for Sunday, May 25th, it's quite alarming. Reports say Koimburi had actually reappeared at the Muga Full Gospel Church in Kiambu County. Yeah. He'd apparently been in hiding for a bit.
Right, after that earlier incident where someone tried to arrest him, wasn't it?
Exactly. So he shows up at this church.
And while he's there, reports say plainclothes officers, allegedly from the DCI, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, they reportedly entered the church.
During the service?
Yeah, during the service. Eyewitnesses described it as, well, a forceful removal. He was apparently bundled into a Subaru. And this detail seems important. The vehicle reportedly had its license plates obscured. That really adds a strange sort of clandestine feel to it.
That obscured license plate detail, yeah, it's striking. It's not standard procedure for law enforcement, is it?
Yeah.
And it immediately makes you question, well, who were these people really, and what were their intentions?
And there's a very personal side to this, too. Koimburi's wife, Mama Shiu, she apparently tried to intervene when they were taking him, and she reportedly got injured in the scuffle. Mm-hmm. She described feeling helpless, obviously very upset. And she said something interesting, that it was two men who looked like they were just part of the congregation who actually approached and grabbed him right after the service ended.
That account from Mama Shiu, it's really powerful, isn't it? Sure. It shows the fear, the disruption this kind of thing causes. It goes beyond just the person targeted. It affects the family, the community. And her question, who are citizens supposed to turn to for protection if the authorities themselves are seen as the threat? That's a really profound point.
It really is. Now, the DCI, they put out a statement. They deny any involvement in this specific incident at the church, this alleged abduction. But they did confirm they had been looking for Koimburi since Friday, in fact.
Okay, so they were looking for him.
Yeah. And their stated reason, they say it's connected to allegations of land fraud cases and also alleged misuse of constituency development funds. For anyone maybe not familiar, those are public funds meant for local development projects in an MP's area.
So you've got these two, starkly different narratives playing out. On one side, you have accounts of a forceful removal by unidentified people. On the other, law enforcement saying, yes, we were looking for him for legal reasons, but we weren't involved in that specific church incident. That contrast is, well, it's something we really need to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And it seems this wasn't the first attempt to apprehend him recently. Just 2 days before, on Friday, May 23rd, there was another incident. This was at Goro Primary School.
Ah, yes. I saw reports on that, too.
Apparently, Koimburi just managed to avoid being picked up. Seems he got a tip-off that an arrest was imminent. He reportedly ditched his car, left his driver, and took off on a motorbike.
Wow. Fled on a motorbike.
Yeah. His driver was apparently held for a short time, then let go. But this whole sequence, Friday then Sunday, it suggests a pattern, right? Someone was actively trying to get him into custody.
That earlier incident, it definitely shows Koimburi knew people might be trying to detain him, whether officially or, otherwise. His actions, fleeing like that, suggest he was pretty worried about what might happen if he was caught.
So, okay, what could be the reasons behind all this? Why does Koimburi seem to be, a target. One big factor that keeps coming up in the reports is his public criticism. He's been quite vocal against the current Kenya Kwanza government's policies. He hasn't really held back.
Well, it's certainly not unusual in politics, is it? For those who strongly oppose the government to find themselves under, let's say, increased scrutiny, that kind of dynamic can manifest in different ways.
And we also have to remember he has some existing legal troubles. Back in February this year, 2025, he was charged. The allegation was forging academic certificates from way back in 1994.
Right, his high school certificate, the KCSE, and 2 university degrees from JKUAT, I believe.
That's right. He denied all those charges, of course. Got released on bail of 200,000 shillings.
So these existing legal cases, they do offer a potential reason, you could say, for why law enforcement might be interested in him. But, as Koimburi's supporters would argue, the timing of all this, especially given his political profile and outspokenness, it naturally leads to questions about, other possible motivations.
And then there was that really explosive claim he made. Said the government spent, was it 13 billion shillings on Raila Odinga's bid for the African Union Commission chair.
Which ultimately didn't succeed, yeah.
Oh.
That was a huge claim.
Huge. And it led to cybercrime charges being filed against Koimburi. Making an allegation like that about that amount of money and such a high-profile political figure, well, that's politically very sensitive.
Oh, absolutely. An accusation of that scale, particularly involving public money and a major political player, it would definitely grab attention and likely provoke a strong reaction from the government. You could see the cybercrime charges as a direct result of him going public with that.
So how are Koimburi's allies seeing all this? Let's look at their perspective. Advocate Stephen Bugwa and also a senator, though the reports didn't name which one they've come out strongly, they're calling it a kidnapping. Plain and simple, illegal.
They're framing it as completely outside the law.
Yeah. And they mention there is a Kiambu High Court order for his arrest pending his case hearing. But they argue this is really about political payback, specifically targeting allies of Rigathi Gachagua.
So suggesting a political vendetta is the real driving force.
Exactly. There was even a specific claim mentioned that Koimburi had been under intense pressure, they used the word drilled, since the week before.
Drilled. That's strong language. So the allies' view is clear. Targeted harassment, politically motivated persecution. The mention of a court order for arrest adds complexity, suggesting maybe a legal basis for seeking him existed. But the way it allegedly happened at the church, that's still highly questionable, definitely not standard legal procedure as they describe it.
And this whole thing seems to be happening against the backdrop of, well, rising political tension. The reports highlight growing friction between leaders in Gachagua's UDA party and the current government.
Yes, putting it in that wider context is important. This Koimburi incident, it doesn't seem entirely isolated. The reports we looked at specifically mentioned that chaotic scene on Saturday in Kakamega County, police disrupting a UDA party meeting there.
Oh, right. That looked pretty intense. Police apparently clashed with UDA leaders. Cleophas Malala, the deputy party leader, his car was even impounded, alleged dangerous driving, they said. It certainly paints a picture of maybe less tolerance for opposition political activities right now.
Yeah, disrupting a political meeting, impounding a senior opposition figure's car. It adds to that feeling of heightened political tension. Could certainly be read as a kind of show of force, perhaps.
And Rigathi Gachagua himself, the former deputy president, he has strongly condemned these events. He's calling it targeted political persecution. Says it's aimed at silencing voices that disagree with the government.
He didn't just make a general statement either, did he?
No, he actually named names. Said he believes others are being targeted too. Mentioned himself, obviously, but also Meru Governor Kawira Mwangaza, Embu Governor Cecily Mariro,
National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi, and Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro as well, I think.
That's right. He listed them all.
That's significant. By listing specific names, Gachagua is framing this as a wider pattern. An alleged campaign of suppression, particularly aimed at the Mount Kenya region and those aligned with him. Not just a one-off thing with Koimburi.
And he went further. Gachagua also urged people in Mount Kenya to basically stay away from government empowerment programs. Called them demeaning, even. He mentioned women getting, 500 shillings at the end of the day, implying it was tokenistic.
Contrasting that directly with President Ruto's promises of government-led empowerment.
Exactly. That's a very direct challenge to the government's outreach efforts in what's a really key political base for them.
Yeah, those remarks are clearly designed to try and undermine the government's initiatives in that region. By calling the programs demeaning, he's appealing to local pride, maybe tapping into some existing frustrations. It just adds another layer of political gamesmanship to this whole tense situation.
It all just feeds into a very charged atmosphere, and the public reaction, online anyway, seems pretty strong according to the reports. On X, formerly Twitter, lots of Kenyans apparently calling this a dark day for democracy. That kind of immediate, strong reaction says a lot about the level of concern out there.
It really does. That online sentiment reflects, I think, a deep unease among ordinary Kenyans about what these events might mean for democratic principles, for basic political freedoms in the country.
Yeah.
Using a phrase like dark day for democracy, it suggests a real fear that fundamental rights might be under threat.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main points. We've got the alleged abduction of a sitting MP, George Koimburi. It followed an earlier apparent attempt to arrest him. The possible reasons seem tangled up with his criticism of the government, his ongoing legal cases, those controversial statements he made.
And then you have his allies shouting political persecution,
Right.
specifically linking it to the Gachagua camp.
Right. And all of this is playing out against this backdrop of wider political friction. The UDA party versus the government.
That sums it up well. The sequence, Friday's escape, Sunday's church incident, the conflicting stories from Koimburi's side, and the DCI. It's a concerning, complicated picture. And the wider context, Kakamega Gachagua's statements, it really suggests this isn't just about Koimburi alone. It feels like part of a broader pattern of political tension and maneuvering.
And I guess, ultimately, whatever the precise reasons behind what happened to George Koimburi turn out to be, this whole episode raises some really serious questions. Questions about the state of political freedom in Kenya today, about the risks people might face if they speak out against the government. And that question from his wife, Mama Shu, who do you turn to for protection? It really hits home, doesn't it? Underscores the seriousness.
It's a deeply unsettling question, yeah. When people start to feel that the very institutions meant to protect their rights might be involved in undermining them, well, that erodes public trust. And trust is absolutely fundamental for any healthy democracy to function.
So as you, our listener, think about this chain of events, these conflicting stories we've talked through, it leads to a final thought, maybe something to mull over. What does this incident, with all its messy details and contrasting narratives, really suggest about the political climate in Kenya right now? And maybe more importantly, what could the broader implications be for the country's democratic institutions moving forward? It's definitely a situation we need to keep watching closely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.